I never asked to know the truth. I just wanted to help something that was dying. But what that being told me in those final hours, what he revealed about the one we call Jesus, it broke something inside me. And then it rebuilt me into someone I barely recognize. What you're about to hear isn't religion. It isn't science fiction. It's what actually happened to me in the woods behind my property 3 years ago. And I need to warn you, once you hear this, you can't unhear it. The way you pray, the way you think about God, the way you understand your own power in this universe, all of it will change. Churches won't teach you this. They can't. Because if people understood what Jesus actually came here to show us, they wouldn't need churches anymore. They wouldn't need anyone standing between them and the divine. And that terrifies the people who built empires on keeping you small. If you've ever felt like something was missing, if you've prayed for years and heard nothing but silence, if you've wondered why a loving God seems so far away, this story will answer questions you didn't even know you were asking. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because what Marcus Reed found bleeding in the forest that October night didn't just change his life, it could change yours too. Now let me tell you how it all began. Marcus Reed was sitting on his porch watching the sun go down when he realized he hadn't spoken to another human being in 11 days. At 54 years old, living alone on 40 acres of forest in northern Washington, this didn't bother him as much as it probably should have. He'd been a veterinarian for 27 years, a good one. People used to drive hours to bring their animals to him because Marcus had a reputation. He could diagnose things other vets missed. His wife Emily used to joke that he could hear what animals were thinking. Marcus never believed that. He believed in observation and hard work, nothing more. But that was before the accident. 6 years ago, a drunk driver crossed the median on Highway 2. Emily died before Marcus reached the hospital. His daughter Lily, 17 years old, held on for 3 more days. Marcus sat beside her bed and prayed. He begged. He made deals with a God he wasn't sure he believed in. He promised everything he had if she would just open her eyes. She never did. After the funerals, Marcus tried to keep working. He lasted 2 weeks. The first time a client started crying over a sick dog, he had to leave the room. He couldn't hold other people's pain anymore, not when his own was drowning him. So he sold everything. The practice, the house. He took the insurance money and bought this land, a small cabin with no cell service and no neighbors for miles. He told himself he needed time to heal. The truth was uglier. He was waiting to die, not actively. He wasn't going to do anything about it. He was just existing, chopping wood, fixing things that broke, drinking whiskey at night until he could sleep without seeing Lily's face. His sister called once a month from Portland. "You can't hide forever, Marcus. Emily wouldn't want this. Lily wouldn't want this." She was probably right, but Marcus didn't know how to want anything anymore. The worst part was the silence. Not the silence of the forest, the silence from above. For 3 years after the accident, Marcus had prayed. Every night, asking for a sign, asking for meaning, asking for anything that would prove their deaths weren't just random cruelty in an indifferent universe. Nothing. Just silence. He remembered his last prayer, standing in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring out at the dark trees. "If you're real," he whispered, "show me. Show me there's something more. Show me their deaths meant something." The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus felt something break inside his chest. That was the night he stopped believing, not in anger. The anger had burned out by then. He stopped because he finally accepted what the silence meant. Either God didn't exist or God didn't care. Either way, talking to the sky was pointless. He was wrong about that, but he wouldn't find out until October 14th. That evening started like any other. Marcus ate dinner alone. He read a book by the fire. The wind was picking up outside, pushing against the windows, making the old cabin creak in familiar ways. And then he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. Not thunder, not a falling tree, something else entirely. A deep tearing noise followed by an impact that he felt through the floorboards. Marcus set down his book. His heart was beating faster, though he couldn't say why. Something about that sound had triggered an instinct he thought had died, along with everything else. He grabbed his flashlight, pulled on his boots, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he walked out into the October darkness toward whatever had just crashed in his woods. The forest was different at night. Marcus had walked these trails hundreds of times, but in the darkness everything felt unfamiliar. The beam of his flashlight cut through the black, illuminating tree trunks and underbrush in harsh white circles. He moved toward the sound, about a quarter mile from his cabin, deeper into the woods than he usually went after dark. The smell hit him first, something metallic, chemical, like burning electronics mixed with something else he couldn't identify. It made his eyes water. Then he saw the light. Not his flashlight, something else. A faint blue glow pulsing through the trees ahead. It flickered like a dying heartbeat. Marcus stopped. His rational mind was screaming at him to turn around. Call someone. Do anything except walk toward that impossible light in the middle of nowhere. But he kept moving. He pushed through a thick stand of ferns and stepped into a small clearing. And what he saw made him drop his flashlight. There was a crater, maybe 15 feet across. The earth was scorched in a perfect circle, still smoking in places. Trees at the edge were bent outward, like something had pushed them back with tremendous force. And in the center of that crater was something that couldn't exist. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't a satellite. It was smooth, curved, about the size of a small car, but shaped like nothing Marcus had ever seen. The surface seemed to shift in the dim light, colors rippling across it like oil on water. And it was cracked open on one side, that blue light bleeding out from somewhere inside. Marcus stood frozen, his heart hammered against his ribs. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. "This isn't real," he whispered. "This can't be real." He took a step backward, then another. His boot hit something soft. Marcus looked down. A hand. Gray, long fingers, not human. He scrambled backward so fast he fell, landing hard on his back. The flashlight rolled away, its beam spinning crazy patterns through the trees. When he looked up, he saw it clearly for the first time. The being was lying on the ground about 10 feet from the craft. It must have crawled out or been thrown from the impact. The body was humanoid, but wrong, too thin, limbs too long, skin that grayish color with a faint shimmer underneath, like something luminescent was fading beneath the surface, and it was hurt. Badly. Even in his panic, Marcus could see that. Dark fluid leaked from a wound on its side. The chest rose and fell in irregular, labored movements. One of its legs was bent at an angle that made Marcus wince. The being's head turned toward him. Marcus's blood went cold. The eyes, huge, black, like two pools of ink that reflected the faint blue light from the ship. They found Marcus and held him there, pinned him in place with an intelligence that was absolutely not human. Every instinct told him to run. His legs wouldn't move. "Oh God," Marcus breathed. "Oh my God." The creature's mouth didn't move, but Marcus heard a voice, not with his ears, inside his head, clear as if someone was standing right beside him. "Please, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you." Marcus flinched so hard he almost fell again. The voice was calm, gentle, almost tired. "What the—" He pressed his palms against his temples. "How are you—" Telepathic communication. The voice again, patient despite the obvious pain. "I know this is frightening. I know you want to run. But I am injured, dying, and I need your help." Marcus's veterinarian instincts kicked in before his fear could stop them. His eyes moved to the wound on the creature's side, the dark fluid, the labored breathing. Whatever this thing was, it was going into shock. "I don't—" Marcus's voice cracked. "I don't know how to help you. I don't know what you are. You know how to heal. I can sense it in you. You have spent your life caring for beings who could not speak for themselves." The eyes held his. "I am asking you to do the same for me." "You're not." Marcus shook his head. "You're not a dog. You're not even from here." "No, I am not. But pain is pain, and death is death. These things are the same everywhere in the universe." Marcus stayed on the ground, breathing hard. His mind raced through possibilities: hallucination, psychotic break, gas leak causing vivid dreams, anything that could explain what he was seeing and hearing. But the blood was real. That dark fluid soaking into the forest floor. The creature's trembling was real. The sound of its ragged breathing was real. "You can leave." The voice was weaker now. "I will not stop you. But if you do, I will die here alone, and the things I came to share will die with me." Share? Marcus heard himself ask. Share what? A pause. Those black eyes seemed to look through him, into him. You have been asking questions, Marcus, every night for years, asking why your wife and daughter were taken, asking if there is meaning, asking if anyone is listening. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. How do you know about that? I know many things, and I have answers. Not all of them, but enough to change what you believe about this life, about what happens after, about the one you call Jesus and what he actually came to teach. The name hit Marcus like electricity. Jesus. He hadn't thought about Jesus in years, not since he'd decided the whole thing was a fairy tale designed to keep people obedient. You're dying, Marcus said, and you want to talk about Jesus? I'm dying, which is exactly why there is no more time for anything except the truth. Marcus looked at the creature, at the wound, at the ship smoking behind it, at the impossible situation he was somehow in the middle of. He thought about Emily, about Lily, about 3 years of silence from a God he'd begged for answers, and here, bleeding in the woods behind his cabin, was something claiming to have those answers. This is insane, Marcus muttered. He got to his feet, walked slowly toward the creature, knelt beside it, close enough now to see the texture of its skin, the shallow movement of its chest. I'm a veterinarian, he said. I don't know if anything I do will help. It will. The voice was fading. Please, get me somewhere safe, somewhere I can rest, and I will tell you everything. Marcus hesitated for one more second. Then he did what he'd done 1,000 times before. He assessed the injuries. He figured out how to move the patient without causing more damage. He stopped thinking about what made sense and started thinking about what needed to be done. This is going to hurt, he said. I know. Marcus lifted the being as carefully as he could. It weighed almost nothing, like carrying a child made of paper and light. He began the slow walk back to his cabin, carrying something impossible in his arms, something that knew his name, something that knew his pain, something that promised to explain everything. Behind him, the ship's blue light flickered twice and then went dark. Marcus laid the being on his couch. It looked absurd, an alien creature on the old plaid cushions where he'd spent so many nights drinking alone. But nothing about this night made sense anyway. He grabbed his emergency kit, the one he kept stocked from his veterinary days, bandages, antiseptic, sutures. He had no idea if any of it would work on something not from this planet. I need to look at that wound, he said out loud. It felt strange, speaking when he knew the response would come inside his head. The bleeding has slowed. The being's mental voice was weaker now. My body is attempting to repair itself, but the damage is significant. I have hours, perhaps. Not days. Marcus knelt beside the couch. Up close, he could see the wound more clearly. The dark fluid had a slight iridescence to it. Not red like blood, more like deep purple mixed with silver. What happened? The crash? My ship was damaged, passing through your atmosphere. A malfunction I could not repair in time. I tried to land safely, but the systems failed. And you just happened to crash behind my cabin? In the middle of nowhere. The being's huge black eyes met his. There are no accidents, Marcus. I was meant to find you. You were meant to find me. Marcus sat back on his heels. That's convenient. It's the truth, whether you believe it or not. Why me? There are 7 billion people on this planet. Why crash land behind a broken-down vet who hasn't talked to anyone in 2 weeks? Because you are ready. Because your pain has opened you. Because you have been asking the right questions, even if you stopped expecting answers. Marcus felt that familiar anger rise in his chest, the anger he'd carried since the hospital, since the funerals, since God or the universe or whatever was in charge had ignored every prayer he'd ever said. I stopped asking questions 3 years ago, he said flatly. Nobody was listening. Someone was always listening, Marcus. You simply weren't told how to hear the response. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the darkness was complete. No moon, no stars through the clouds, just black. You said you had answers. About Jesus, that's what you said in the woods. Yes. I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe in any of it anymore. So if you're here to preach to me, you picked the wrong guy. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to correct. Marcus turned around. Correct what? Everything you were taught about him, everything the institutions built in his name have distorted. The being shifted slightly on the couch, wincing. Jesus of Nazareth was real. He walked your planet 2,000 years ago, and he was extraordinary, but not in the way your religions teach. Marcus crossed his arms. Let me guess, he was an alien, like you. No, he was human, fully human, but he understood something that most humans have forgotten, something your religions accidentally buried under centuries of doctrine and control. And what's that? That you are not separate from God, that you never were, that the power Jesus demonstrated lives inside every single human being waiting to be accessed. Marcus laughed. It came out harsh, bitter. Right, I can walk on water and raise the dead. I just forgot how. You mock because you don't understand, and you don't understand because you were taught incorrectly, deliberately. Deliberately? The institutions needed you to feel small, Marcus. They needed you to believe you were broken, sinful, dependent on them to reach God. Because if you knew the truth, if you understood what Jesus actually taught, you wouldn't need priests, you wouldn't need churches, you wouldn't need anyone standing between you and the divine. Marcus was quiet. He'd had thoughts like this before, late at night, wondering why a loving God would create a system where billions of people went to hell simply for being born in the wrong place or time, wondering why prayer felt like talking to an empty room. So what did he actually teach? Marcus asked. According to you. The being closed its eyes for a moment. When it spoke again, the mental voice carried something that felt like reverence. Jesus taught that the kingdom of heaven is within you, not above you, not somewhere you go when you die. Within. He said this directly. Your own scriptures record it. But the church treated it as metaphor because the literal truth was too threatening. Threatening to who? To anyone who profits from your powerlessness. If heaven is within you, if God is within you, if you already have everything you need to heal, to create, to transform your life, then what do you need them for? Marcus walked back toward the couch. His skepticism was still there, but something else was pushing against it, curiosity. The same curiosity that had made him walk into the woods in the first place. Keep talking, he said. Jesus demonstrated what humans are capable of when they understand their true nature. He healed the sick, not by magic, not by supernatural intervention, by accessing the creative power that exists within all consciousness, power that can reorganize matter, shift energy, restore what is broken. That sounds like magic to me. It sounds like magic because you don't understand the mechanism, but there is a mechanism, a law as reliable as gravity. Jesus knew it. He tried to teach it, but his words were twisted after he died. What law? The being opened its eyes and looked directly at Marcus. Thought creates reality. Emotion amplifies creation, and certainty makes it manifest. This is the law that governs your universe. Jesus used it every time he performed what you call a miracle, and he tried to tell you that you could do the same thing. Marcus shook his head. If that were true, everyone would be rich and healthy. Everyone would have everything they want. No, because almost no one uses the law correctly. They use it in reverse, constantly. What do you mean? What do you think about most, Marcus? The being's eyes held him. What fills your mind when you wake up and when you fall asleep? Marcus didn't want to answer, but the answer came anyway, rising up from somewhere he couldn't control. Lily, Emily, the accident, the hospital, the silence that followed, the emptiness, the pointlessness, the feeling that nothing would ever be right again. He thought about these things constantly, every single day. You see it now, the being said gently. You have spent 6 years focusing on loss, on pain, on absence, and what has your life become? Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. More loss, more pain, more absence. This is not punishment, Marcus. This is the law operating exactly as it always does. You plant seeds of grief, you harvest grief. You plant seeds of isolation, you harvest isolation. So it's my fault? Marcus's voice came out sharper than he intended. I created my own suffering? I chose to have my family killed by a drunk driver? You did not choose the accident, but you chose what to do with your mind afterward. You chose to focus on what was taken instead of what remains. You chose to see the universe as hostile instead of supportive. And the universe, which is always listening, gave you exactly what you focused on. Marcus turned away. His hands were trembling. This is not blame. The being's voice was soft. This is power. The same power that created your suffering can end it. The same law that brought you 6 years of isolation can bring you connection, meaning, peace, but only if you understand how to use it. How? The word came out before Marcus could stop it, the same way Jesus taught. But the teaching has been so distorted that almost no one remembers the original instruction. The being paused. Its breathing was shallow now. Whatever energy it was using to communicate, it was costing something. When you pray, Marcus, how do you pray? Marcus thought about it. The last prayers he'd said before giving up, the desperate bargaining at Lily's bedside. I ask for things, he said slowly. I beg, I plead, I say, please God, if you're there, please help me. Yes, like almost every human, you approach prayer as a beggar approaching a king, small and unworthy, hoping for scraps of favor. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Be humble before God? That is what they taught you, but it is not what Jesus taught. Then what did Jesus teach? Jesus taught that prayer is not asking, it is declaring. It is not begging for something you don't have. It is claiming something that is already yours. Marcus frowned. That doesn't make sense. When Jesus healed the sick, did he say, please, Father, if it's your will, maybe heal this person? No. He spoke with absolute authority. Rise and walk. Be healed. Your faith has made you whole. He did not ask. He declared. But he was Jesus. He was the Son of God. And what did he tell his followers? That they would do even greater things than he did. He was not claiming special status. He was demonstrating what is possible for anyone who understands the truth. The being's eyes seemed to glow slightly in the dim cabin light. The truth is that you are not separate from the source of creation. You are an extension of it. When you pray as a beggar, you reinforce the illusion of separation. You tell the universe, I am small, I am lacking, I am far from God. And the universe agrees. So what's the alternative? Pray as Jesus prayed, with gratitude, with certainty, not for what you want to happen, but as if it has already happened. Marcus let out a frustrated breath. How can I be grateful for something that hasn't happened yet? That's just pretending. That's lying to myself. Is it? Or is it understanding that time is not what you think it is, that on a deeper level, everything that can exist already exists, and your focus is simply choosing which possibility becomes your experience? Marcus sat down heavily in the chair across from the couch. His head was spinning. This is insane. This is physics. The being's voice was patient. Your own scientists are beginning to understand it. Consciousness affects matter. Observation changes outcomes. The universe is not a dead machine. It is alive and responsive, and it responds to your thoughts and emotions more directly than you can imagine. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Prove it, he finally said. What? You're asking me to throw out everything I believe based on your word. Prove it. Show me something I can't explain away. The being regarded him with those bottomless black eyes. Very well. Think of a number. Any number between 1 and 1,000. Hold it in your mind. Don't speak it aloud. Marcus thought of 847, the number on Lily's hospital room. He couldn't have said why he chose it. The being said immediately, your daughter's room. Marcus felt ice run down his spine. You could have read my mind. I did read your mind. That's the point. Consciousness is not locked inside your skull. It extends outward. It connects with everything. There are no true secrets, no true separation. This is what Jesus understood. This is why he knew people's thoughts, their histories, their hidden sins. Marcus stood up and walked to the other side of the room. That's one trick. That doesn't prove anything about prayer or manifestation or... Look at your hand. Marcus looked down. Nothing unusual, just his hand. The scar on your palm. How you got it? There was a small scar, faded, from 15 years ago when he'd slipped with a scalpel during a surgery. That scar can be healed. Right now. Tonight. If you access what Jesus accessed. That's impossible. Scars don't just disappear. Nothing is impossible when you understand what you truly are, but you won't believe until you experience it yourself. So we will do it together. Marcus stared at the being, at its wound, still slowly leaking that strange fluid, at the absolute conviction in those alien eyes. "You're dying," he said, "and you want to teach me how to heal a scar." "I'm dying, which means I have no time for anything except what matters, and this matters. This is why I came." Marcus felt something shift inside him. Some wall that had been standing for 6 years developed a crack. "What do I do?" "Sit down, close your eyes, and for once in your life, stop thinking about what you've lost." Marcus sat. He closed his eyes. "Now, bring your attention to the scar. Feel it, not with your fingers, with your awareness." Marcus tried. He'd never done anything like this. He felt foolish. "You're judging. Stop. Just feel." He breathed, let go of the self-criticism, focused on his palm, on the small ridge of scar tissue there. "Now, here is what they never taught you. Don't ask for the scar to heal. Don't beg. Don't plead. Instead, feel gratitude. Feel the emotion you would feel if you looked down and the scar was gone. How can I feel that if it hasn't happened? This is the practice. This is the art. You must generate the emotion first. The emotion is the signal. The emotion tells the universe what you want to experience. Feel it as if it is already done, as if you are remembering something wonderful that already happened. Marcus tried. He imagined looking at his palm, seeing smooth skin. He tried to feel relieved, grateful, stronger. The being urged. This is not intellectual. It must be felt in your chest, in your gut. Joy, gratitude, as if your prayer has already been answered. Because it has. You simply haven't caught up to it yet. Something strange happened. As Marcus focused, as he pushed himself to feel instead of think, warmth spread through his hand, a tingling sensation, like blood returning to a limb that had fallen asleep. Good. Hold it. Don't analyze. Don't doubt. Just feel. The warmth intensified. Marcus's logical mind screamed that this was ridiculous, that he was sitting in his cabin with a dying alien doing some kind of New Age visualization, and nothing real was happening. But the warmth was real. The tingling was real. And when he opened his eyes and looked at his palm, the scar was faded, not gone completely, but lighter, smaller, as if years of healing had happened in minutes. Marcus stared at his hand. His breath caught. This is what Jesus knew. This is what he did. He accessed a state of consciousness where healing was already complete, and physical reality rearranged itself to match. He tried to teach this to everyone, but they wanted to worship him instead of become like him. Marcus touched the faded scar. It was real. The change was real. Why doesn't everyone know this? Because the institutions that rose after Jesus died needed you not to know. They needed you dependent. Coming to church, paying tithes, confessing sins, following rules. If you could access God directly, if you could heal yourself, if you could create your reality through the power of your own consciousness, their entire structure would collapse. So they hid it. They reframed it. They made Jesus unique instead of an example. They made salvation external instead of internal. They made you a sinner needing rescue instead of a creator who forgot their power. Marcus was breathing hard. Everything he'd been taught, everything he'd rejected, everything he'd felt about the emptiness of religion. And prayer, real prayer, it's just feeling gratitude for things before they happen. It's more than that. It's understanding that you are part of the creative force of the universe, not separate from it, not begging it for scraps. You are it, expressing itself in human form. When you pray correctly, you're not asking someone else to fix your life. You're directing the same power that built galaxies. That sounds like blasphemy. It is the opposite of blasphemy. It is the truth that Jesus lived and died trying to share. I and the Father are one. He wasn't claiming something special for himself. He was stating a fact that applies to every conscious being. You and the Father are one. You have always been one. You simply forgot. Marcus looked at his faded scar, at the alien bleeding on his couch, at the dark windows and the impossible night he was living. "My wife," he said quietly, "my daughter. Where are they? If God is real, if all of this is real, where are they now?" The being's voice became gentle. "They are not gone, Marcus. Consciousness does not end. It cannot end. It simply changes form. What you call death is a transition, like walking through a door into another room. Marcus's voice cracked. Can I talk to them? Can they hear me? They have always been able to hear you. You have simply been transmitting grief so loudly that no other signal could get through. Tears welled up in Marcus's eyes, the first tears he'd allowed in years. When you quiet the pain, when you stop the endless loop of loss and guilt and anger, you will feel them, not with your ears, but you will know they are there. They have been waiting for you to stop mourning long enough to sense their presence. Marcus put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. The being waited in silence, patient, letting him feel what he needed to feel. After a long moment, Marcus looked up. What about heaven? Hell? Judgment? What happens after we die? There is no old man on a throne deciding your fate. That is a story invented to control through fear. The being's voice was firm but kind. What exists is this. After the body ends, consciousness reviews the life lived, not through external judgment, through self-understanding. You feel the impact of every choice, every kindness you feel as the receiver felt it. Every cruelty you feel as the victim felt it. There is no punishment except understanding. And then consciousness continues. It grows. It evolves. It may choose to experience physical form again on this world or others, or it may remain in non-physical states. There are many possibilities, many dimensions. Physical life on Earth is one classroom in an infinite school. Marcus wiped his face. Why are you telling me this? Why does any of this matter to you? You're from another world. Why do you care what humans believe? Because consciousness is connected. All consciousness, everywhere. What happens on Earth affects the whole, and your species is at a critical moment. You have the power to destroy yourselves or to awaken. The choice will be made in this generation. Awaken to what? To what you truly are, to the power you carry, to the connection that makes separation an illusion. Jesus tried to initiate this awakening 2,000 years ago, but humanity wasn't ready. They turned his teaching into religion, his example into worship, his invitation into rules. The being shifted, grimacing in pain. Now the moment has come again. More humans are questioning. More are feeling the emptiness of the old stories. They are ready for the truth. And you came here to tell one guy in the woods? I came here because you are ready to hear, and because what you hear you will share, not through preaching, through living differently, through demonstrating what is possible. Others will see and remember what they forgot. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The fire had died down. The cabin was growing cold. I don't know if I can do this, he said finally. I don't know if I can believe any of it. You already do. The being's eyes held his. The scar on your palm tells you what is possible. Your wife and daughter, waiting to be felt again, tell you there is more than what you see. The question is not whether you believe. The question is whether you have the courage to live as if it's true. And if I do, what then? Then everything changes. Your life, your death, your understanding of why you're here. You stop being a victim of random tragedy and become a conscious creator. You stop waiting for God to save you and recognize that God is what you are. The being coughed. That strange purple-silver fluid appeared at the corner of its mouth. I don't have much more time, Marcus, but before I go, I need you to understand one more thing. The most important thing. What? Jesus said, love one another. This is not sentiment. It is technology. Love is not just an emotion. It is the frequency of creation itself. When you operate from love, truly, unconditionally, you align with the force that built everything. Healing becomes natural. Manifestation becomes effortless. Connection becomes constant. The being's eyes were dimming now. Whatever light had been behind them was fading. This is why they told you God is love. Not because it sounds nice, because it is literally true. The creative force of the universe is love, and you are made of it. You have always been made of it. You simply forgot. Marcus felt something break open inside his chest, something that had been locked since the hospital, since he held Lily's hand and felt it go cold. I don't know how to love anymore, he whispered. I don't know if I have any left. You have an infinite supply. It is what you are. The pain you feel is not the absence of love. It is love with nowhere to go. Let it flow again, Marcus. Let it move through you, and watch what happens. The being closed its eyes. Its breathing was barely visible now. Remember what I taught you. Thought creates, emotion amplifies, certainty manifests, and love is the frequency that makes it all work. This is the teaching of Jesus. This is what they hid. This is what you must now live. Marcus reached out and took the being's hand. It was cool to the touch, fragile. What's your name? He asked. I never asked your name. A faint pulse of warmth came through the touch, what felt almost like a smile in the telepathic connection. Names are for separation, but you may call me Eli. It is close enough to something you can pronounce. Eli. Marcus held the hand gently. Thank you for all of this. Do not thank me. Use it. That is all the thanks I need. The cabin was silent except for the wind outside. Marcus sat with Eli through the night, holding on as the breathing grew slower and slower. And somewhere in those dark hours, Marcus Reed began to pray again. Not the old prayers, not begging or pleading or bargaining with an absent God. He closed his eyes and felt gratitude for the truth he'd been given, for the possibility that Emily and Lily were not gone, for the faint, impossible hope that he might feel them again. He felt it in his chest, in his gut, not thinking about it, feeling it. And in the silence of that cabin, for the first time in 6 years, he felt something respond. Eli died just before dawn. Marcus felt the moment it happened. The hand he was holding went from cool to cold. The faint pulse of presence in his mind simply stopped, like a radio switching off. He sat there for a long time, holding the hand of something that had traveled across the universe to crash in his woods and change everything he believed. Then he buried Eli beside the crashed ship. It took most of the morning. The ground was hard, and Marcus wasn't young anymore. But it felt right. It felt necessary. He said a few words, not a prayer exactly, more like a promise. I'll use it. What you taught me. I'll use it. The first week was the hardest, not because of doubt. Marcus had plenty of that, but because changing the habits of 6 years doesn't happen overnight. He'd wake up, and his mind would immediately go to the familiar places. Emily's laugh, Lily's last breath, the silence of the empty house. But now, when he caught himself spiraling, he remembered what Eli said. You plant seeds of grief, you harvest grief. So he tried something different. When the dark thoughts came, he didn't fight them. He acknowledged them. Then he deliberately shifted to something else. A memory of Emily dancing in the kitchen, Lily's face when she got her driver's license, moments of joy instead of loss. It felt fake at first, forced, like putting a bandage on a wound that needed surgery, but he kept doing it. The scar on his palm was almost invisible now. He looked at it a dozen times a day. Proof. Physical proof that what Eli taught him was real. By the second week, something started to shift. Marcus was sitting on his porch one morning when he felt it. A warmth in his chest, a sense of presence. Not Eli. Something else. Someone else. Emily. He couldn't see her, couldn't hear her voice, but he felt her, like she was sitting right beside him, her hand on his arm, the way she used to do when she wanted him to pay attention. Marcus broke down crying. But for the first time in 6 years, the tears weren't only grief. There was relief in them, joy, the feeling of finding something he thought was lost forever. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I couldn't feel you before. The warmth intensified, just for a moment, like a response. After that, Marcus started practicing every day. He'd sit in the morning with his eyes closed and feel gratitude, not for anything specific at first, just the feeling itself. The physical sensation of thankfulness in his chest. Then he'd add images, the life he wanted. Not mansions and sports cars, simple things, connection, purpose. The feeling that his existence mattered for something. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He felt it as if it was already real. 3 weeks after Eli's death, Marcus drove into town for the first time in months. He needed supplies. That was the excuse. But something else was pulling him. A feeling he couldn't explain. At the hardware store, he ran into Helen. A woman he vaguely knew from years ago. She'd been a client. Brought her cat in once for a tumor surgery. Marcus had saved the cat. He'd forgotten about it completely. Marcus Reed? She looked shocked to see him. My God, I thought you'd moved away, or... She didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus knew what she meant. People assumed the worst when someone disappeared like he had. Still here, he said. Just took some time. I never got to thank you properly. Helen's eyes were wet. For Whiskers, he lived another 4 years after that surgery. Best 4 years we had with him. Marcus felt something move through him. A warmth, not from outside, from within. I'm glad, he said, and meant it. They talked for 20 minutes. Just normal conversation, nothing profound. But when Marcus drove home, he realized it was the longest he'd talked to anyone in over 2 years. And it felt good. The changes kept coming, small at first, then bigger. Marcus started sleeping through the night. The nightmares that had plagued him for 6 years simply stopped. He'd dream of Emily and Lily, but they weren't dying in the dreams. They were laughing, telling him it was okay, telling him to live. He began eating better, taking care of himself. Not because he wanted to live forever, but because he finally understood that his body was a gift, a vehicle for consciousness, worth maintaining. 1 month after Eli's death, Marcus's sister called. You sound different, she said, suspicious. What's going on? Nothing. Everything. I don't know how to explain it. Are you okay? Do I need to come up there? I'm okay, Sarah. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually okay. She didn't believe him, but she would. Eventually, they all would. 2 months after Eli's death, Marcus made a decision. He drove to the animal shelter in the nearest town, walked in and told them he was a veterinarian, retired but licensed, asked if they needed help. They nearly fell over themselves saying yes. He started volunteering 3 days a week, then 4, helping animals that no one else wanted, using his skills for something again. And he started noticing something strange. The animals he treated healed faster than expected. Wounds that should have taken weeks closed in days. Sick animals that should have died pulled through against all odds. Marcus didn't tell anyone what he was doing. The gratitude practice before each treatment. The feeling of healing already complete while his hands did the physical work. The love he deliberately channeled through his touch. But the staff noticed the results. You have a gift, one of the young techs told him. I've never seen anything like it. Marcus just smiled. If only she knew. 3 months after Eli's death, Marcus stood in the clearing where the ship had crashed. The scorch marks were still visible. The disturbed earth where he'd buried Eli. The bent trees at the edge that hadn't straightened. He closed his eyes and sent out a feeling of gratitude. To Eli, to whatever force had sent that ship crashing into his life. To Emily and Lily, who he could feel now whenever he got quiet enough. And he made another promise. Not just to use what he'd learned, but to share it. Somehow, some way, with anyone who was ready to hear, because Eli was right. The world was waking up. People were hungry for something real, something beyond the empty rituals and fear-based doctrines that had failed so many for so long. Marcus didn't know how he'd do it. He was just a broken-down vet in the woods, nobody special. But then again, Jesus had been a carpenter's son. And look what he'd started. Maybe that was the point. Maybe the message was never meant to come from temples and cathedrals. Maybe it was always supposed to spread person to person, life to life. One transformed soul showing another what was possible. Marcus opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, Eli's people were still watching, still waiting to see what humanity would do with the gift of consciousness. Marcus intended to make them proud. What Marcus Reed discovered in those woods changed everything. Not just what he believed about Jesus, what he believed about himself, about prayer, about the power that lives inside every single person reading this. You've heard the teaching now, the same teaching that was hidden for 2,000 years. Thought creates, emotion amplifies, certainty manifests, and love is the frequency that makes it all work. The question is, what will you do with it? You can close this video and go back to the life you had before. Keep praying the old way. Keep feeling like God is far away. Keep wondering why nothing ever changes, no matter how hard you try. Or you can try something different. Tonight, before you sleep, close your eyes. Think of something you want. not something huge, something small. And instead of begging for it, feel grateful for it. Feel the emotion of already having it. Hold that feeling for as long as you can. Then watch what happens. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But you won't know until you try. If this story touched something inside you, leave a comment. Tell me about your own experiences with prayer, with loss, with the feeling that something bigger is waiting just beyond what you can see. And if you're ready for more stories like this one, stories that challenge what you think you know and open doors you didn't know existed, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because Marcus Reed isn't the only one who found truth in an impossible place. There are more stories, more revelations, more secrets that have been buried for far too long, and you deserve to hear them all.